Thank you, everyone, for taking time out on your evening to come sit in on this 5-day deal webinar. It's going to be a really interesting one. We have lots of stuff to go through and lots of talented photographers, at least 3 of them, to talk about their work and their participation in the 5-day deal. Before I introduce the folks in the show, just a little bit of housekeeping. Yes, this webinar will be recorded and is being recorded, and we're also streaming live on YouTube. So you can check us out on either one of those services. Either stay here, or, within the Zoom, or watch us on YouTube. Secondly, if you have a question and you want to sort of interact with the folks in the webinar, just go ahead and put it in that Q&A section at the bottom of the Zoom window. And when we get to that segment, which will be closer to the end, I will call on you, or bring your question up and sort of have the appropriate cast member answer your question. Speaking of cast members, on this webinar, we have Anna Brandt. Anna Brandt, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? What is your elevator pitch? And, your cocktail party pitch that you tell people when they ask you, what do you do?
Oh my goodness. When was the last time I went to a cocktail party around here? Well, I'm a maternity and newborn photographer. I have been for 20 years. 20 years. I can't even believe it. And of course, I do children and family, but I specialize in maternity and newborn. Last year, I traveled to over 30 countries, teaching around the world. So I teach pretty much just as much as I shoot, and I love it.
Okay, and I'm gonna trying to bring your screen share, your Instagram profile up. I'll bring that up in just a moment here. Thank you, Anna. Chris Orwig, what about you, man? You and I go way back since, man, like what, the Jurassic period, I think it was when we met. Like, what's going on? What's your elevator pitch?
Yeah, it's great to see you, Frederick. So my pitch is, I usually tell people I do 3 things, and I do photography, of course, I write books, and then I teach, and then go from there. And part of my thing is, I became a photographer because I was hit by a car, and I was in a lot of chronic pain. I was hit by a car while skateboarding, and while I was going through that, this is a couple decades ago, my dad gave me a camera, and that camera helped me to heal, grow, change, and kind of lit this new fire inside of me. And so that's a lot of what I bring to photography and teaching.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, you and I have had conversation. I think I've interviewed you a couple of times back in the day, and your style of teaching is very inspirational, very just like, Zen surfer-ish, So I love it. I love it. Welcome to the webinar, man. And also, my good buddy over there, Mr. Matt Granger. So what's going on, Matt?
Not too much. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me. I've been waiting for someone to ask me, what do you do? Because I heard the best response, whatever it takes.
All right. Well, what do you do?
I'm waiting for a cocktail party.
What is it?
So a little mix, actually. It sounds like between what our other 2 guests do. I got my first camera from my father as well, back when I was about 5, and I fell in love with shooting then. I started doing it professionally about 10 or 12 years ago. And until last year, my time was fairly evenly split between teaching, shooting, and leading photography tours. This year, obviously, there's been a lot fewer tours. So fortunately, we were already leaning in more to online education. So that's, taken up a lot more of our time this year.
I love it. I love it. Well, cool. Let's dive into these questions, because there's a ton, and I'm glad to have all you guys on here, because each of you are successful in your businesses, but you attack it from different vectors. Matt, let's continue with you. You've got a gigantic YouTube channel. You're an educator. You create tutorials. You do a bunch of stuff. Can you, like, when people come to you and they say, hey, Matt, I want to be like you, or I want to build a business that's similar to yours, that I get to enjoy my photography while also hopefully generating revenue, what do you tell them? How should they proceed?
So there's a couple of different parts to that, I guess. People might think that what I do is making YouTube videos, and that's what generates income, but it's not really the case. And it can be easy, whether you're doing it professionally or not, to think that having a big audience automatically translates into a really successful business. And that's not how it works. I think you have to separate out why do you want to be doing photography as a business rather than a hobby, and get clear on, is it really for you? Because it's not for everyone. And don't confuse having a large audience with having a lot of customers, because they're not one and the same thing. So yeah, kind of really getting clear on what it is that you want from your photography is the first step, because for a lot of people, having it as a sideline weekend hobby where maybe you take a job a couple of times a year and you shoot whatever you want on your own agenda, for a lot of people, that's how you're going to get the most enjoyment out of your photography. If you want to make it into a full-time business, then developing your business skills is probably the most important thing that you can work on, rather than your audience size or your photographic technique even.
Yeah. And taking that on a slightly different direction, should photographers, sort of take a self-reflective moment to think about, do they want to, if they love photography, should they try to make it into a business, or should they just lean into being the best photographer that they can?
Here's the thing. You can be a hobbyist or you can do it for business, but you have to make a decision and not complain about it. Meaning the hobbyist photographers will go, I'm just doing it for fun and my friends and family. And then 5 seconds later, they're complaining on social media that no one's paying them. And then when someone more experienced calls them out and says, well, wait a minute, do you have a business license? Do you have insurance? Is this a business or it's a hobby? Oh, no, I don't have any of that. I'm just a hobbyist. Okay, so then hold on. You've got to make a decision, and too many people don't make a decision. When I quit my day job, I had worked in corporate for 10 solid years, and one day just quit, walked out as a web project manager, said, I just quit. And the next day said, I'm going to be a professional photographer. I already had my website because I was a web designer. I already had bank accounts because my dad's an accountant, and I just went to work. I didn't just go, oh, today I'm going to play. I'm a hobbyist. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to take pictures. I was an amateur for almost 15 years, never taking $1. And I was happy as the hobbyist because I wasn't trying to be a professional. So you've just got to decide what you're going to do. And too many people don't decide because they'll justify the lack of money or the lack of customers, blaming it on the fact that they're a hobbyist. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. Or that hey, I don't have the gear that Anna shoots with, so I can't be a pro. Yeah, it's always the excuses, right? But then, it's interesting you say that. Should, Chris, or we're gonna throw it to you. So like Anna was saying, should photographers do that binary modality where they just, hey, I'm gonna burn the ships and dive into this 100%? There's no looking back, or could it be like 1 foot on the shore and 1 in the water? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's so many ways to do photography. That's the wonderful thing about this. And all three of us obviously do it a little bit differently too. And the way I think of the income side of the equation is energy. And Walt Disney said, I'm pretty sure he said this, but that we don't make movies to make money. We make movies that make money so we can make more movies. And basically, as a photographer, if I earn an income, then I can buy that lens. I can go on that trip. I can shoot that photo. And there's like this energy cycle. And so the exciting thing about shifting more towards a business isn't, setting up all the accounting stuff, getting the insurance and doing that. It's the energy. And so for if someone is kind of feeling like, yeah, I want more of this, then I say lean into that. Or if they're more, I don't know, if they're more comfortable in doing it just as kind of a hobby or a pastime, and that's giving them energy, then do it that way. So I do think there's a lot of ways to do it. And it's really up to that person to figure that out a little bit.
And Chris, I want oh, go ahead, Anna. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the problem is when the hobbyist complains that they're not being taken seriously like the professional.
I think you both have the same point even.
And we always hear photographers, and instructors say you have to specialize and get good at one particular genre, like, infant photography or fashion or landscape and that sort of thing. But, I want to put it out to the group here. How do you get good at one of those? How do you find out what Matt Granger, maybe you could start us off. How do you find out what your niche is? And should you, or should you just be a generalist forever and be good at everything?
Sure. Just throwing back to the last one, what I was saying, I heard Anna say, what was I asking?
Yeah, go for it.
I do think that both of what you were saying is maybe two sides of the same coin, that Anna's saying you need to choose a path. That is, it's a really empowering thing to say, I'm actively choosing to do this and I'm going to put my energy into this. And that kind of feeds, I think, into the kind of thing that Chris was saying, that you set yourself up and you put your energy into that place. And it's not well, if I happen to get a job here or there, that'd be great. It's an active, engaged thing. About the specializing, I don't know. I'm in two minds. I'd be interested to hear what you all think as well. But when I think of my favorite photographers over the past century, they generally are specialists in a field and they're known for a style of photography. And yes, maybe that amazing fashion photographer can shoot landscapes and has a great portfolio, but it's not what they're known for. But I would say 9 out of 10 working photographers do more than one thing. And that it's not, there would be more people who do some weddings and some newborns and some events than do just one of them, because it can be hard to, until you have that name, to get enough work to sustain yourself just in one field.
Yeah. Do you guys feel the same way, Chris and Anna?
Go for it, Anna.
Okay. So yes, and I agree 100% with what Matthew was saying. So I specialized in pregnancy and newborn, but when I started out, I didn't have any pregnancy and newborn clients. And so there's, consistency is the key to success. Your name is going to be known when people see a consistent body of work from you. And so what happens is people will get known for their genre because people see a particular style from a photographer because that photographer has paid attention to honing that style. But at the end of the day, if you're a photographer, that means you love photography. During quarantine, I shot my daughters as mermaids, and it was the highlight of my year, but hands down in the fog. And it was a crazy day. I literally, if I didn't have this fake screen behind me, you'd see 4 huge mermaid canvases behind me. Literally in 20 years, it was probably one of the best days of my life. So I think if you love, there isn't a photographer out there who's known for something that also doesn't love the craft. So we're going to experiment and we're going to play and we're going to learn new things and buy new gear. But along the way, if you specialize in something, it allows consistency for your craft and people will know who you are.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Chris, Anna mentioned quarantine and shooting and being inspired during a lockdown. What tips do you give photographers and your students to stay inspired when faced with constraints like that, like you can't go out or you got to wear a mask or that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's a fun question. And I think, kind of tying back into something Anna said when she was talking about complaining. My favorite photographers and the most successful photographers don't complain because they're creatives, right? And what creatives do is they're like, problem, okay, let me find out 16 solutions and then chase 2 of them, and that's like creative people. That's just how we work. We're like, the light just shifted. Okay, great. Game on. Lens just broke. Grab this other lens, go for it. And so I think it's, more than anything, and Frederick, you alluded to this as well, it's more than the if only thinking, if only I had that lens, if only I lived in this place, if only it wasn't quarantine, if only I had a bigger budget. And all the successful students I've had, and I've had thousands and thousands, I'm sure, like you, Matthew and Anna, and the successful ones, they do not adopt if only thinking. They're kind of both and. They're like, yes, and quarantine, let's go. This is a unique time. Let's go. And so anyway, I don't know so much as specific things. There's a lot of kind of exercises that you can do, but I think more than anything, it's adopting the active creative hat. We're creators, we're makers. We're not passively just saying, oh, this is happening to us. We're saying within this time, within this era, how can we make? And so that's what I really encourage people to start thinking about.
Yeah, you know what? In previous webinars, some of the folks were mentioning just the idea of education, right? And using this downtime as a way to like experiment with different things and learn, through resources like the 5-day deal, just saying, hey, you know, like, and as a pregnancy and newborn photographer, and maybe another photographer is, but you know, maybe I'll try to do this. Let me see what that looks like, since I have a couple of hours to play around with light and do that sort of thing. So yeah, it's interesting. You know, I wanted to
Can I
put it out
jump in there
there.
real quick? So,
You
sorry to
can,
interrupt. Can I
absolutely.
jump in there? I just want to go to my
Absolutely.
teenage daughter. She's 16, and she has gotten so good at guitar throughout quarantine and COVID and stuff. And it's the same thing. Like, she just turned to education. Her educational thing was guitar. And rather than saying, oh, this is poor old me, she's become an amazing guitarist. So I think if there's ever a time in the era of the world to become great at photography, this is a really good time, because there's a different pressure that's happening right now. And it is like, and Anna, when you're talking about the mermaid thing, you probably wouldn't have done that shoot, or you might have put a different pressure on yourself when you did that shoot, or time or clients, but it's a chance to say, okay, what matters? Who am I? Why am I? Go. And so I do
Yeah.
think education is one of the solutions. That's what creatives do, right? They never stop learning.
I would have never done that shoot, just so you know, never. I grabbed my two teenage daughters, 15 and 17. We went down to the foggy beach. You weren't allowed on the beach. I told my videographer to meet me there. He told me, no, the visibility's 5%. He kept telling us to turn away. There was no parking. We had to park on PCH and walk, grabbing tails and my daughters. And we had no idea what we were doing. We couldn't see. And at the end of that night, both of my daughters hugged me and said, thank you, because it was one of the most amazing nights in 20 years that I've ever had. And there's no way I would have done that. There's no way.
Anna, can you tell us about that shoot a little bit? I'm curious. Like, what?
Yeah, I
Did you
want to
bring
show you
lights
the
out
shot.
there? Was it just like a strobe? Like, what were you doing?
If I can send you this shot, I know it's deep in my Instagram somewhere, but if I send you this shot, you will agree with me. What happened was, I had bought these tails during quarantine. I still don't even know why I bought them. I have two daughters, 15 and 17. One is 5'6", one is 5'8". They're ballet dancers. They're on point. They're long and lean and beautiful. I honestly don't even know what was going through my brain that day, but I just felt the need to go to the beach and shoot these mermaids. I had no lights, nothing. I mean, I had my 5D Mark IV, 24 to 70 USM2. There's no reflector in the world that would help you. We got there completely foggy, Laguna Beach. My videographer is in a 1DX Mark II. No, that's the second one. If you go down, if you go to Anna Brandt Mermaids, this is my Anna Brandt. Go to Anna Brandt Mermaids. It's probably one of the first pictures, because I had to create an Instagram for it, and then you'll see it. There's a picture. Okay, there's a picture. I'm looking at a 30 by 40 on my wall right now where both daughters are looking out to the ocean. If you find that one, you couldn't see anything. My videographer is like, Anna, I can't even see you. The girls can't move in tails. Okay, scroll down, keep going. That shot, bottom. So those first two shots, the bottom one and those first two, that's what we're seeing. You can't see anything. They're wearing wigs that I got on Amazon like 2 days before. And the fog is real. Everything's real. We did a video of it on my YouTube channel. You can go to annabrandtvideos.com and see a YouTube video. That shot is 50 by 60 on my wall. Wow. That day, it looks 10 times better on canvas. I couldn't see the tails. They couldn't move. We had to carry each other. I had no assistant. I had to run back and forth. I think I cut my feet 5 times. I was shooting like in the film days, just bracketing, changing my exposure, just moving. Yeah, there's some video footage, moving like a crazy person. We shot the whole thing in about 20 minutes and did video. And then at the end, the waves took their wigs. And there's no way I would have done that. I'm so busy running a business and being a mom and taking care of everything. And that day was 5,000% creativity. What Matthew and Kristen, both of them are talking about, it's his daughter learning guitar right now. I heard my son playing guitar the other day. So many, and I know I'm going to ramble, so I'm going to finish, but my biggest frustration is the complaining. I just want everyone to stop complaining. And I kept saying during quarantine, everyone's been complaining. There's no time. There's no time for education. There's no time to watch videos. There's no time to learn a new tool. There's no time to learn how to use actions. Well, guess what? The world shut down and all we had was time, right?
Yeah, that's
right. Do with that time. And so I
said excuses.
Yeah. And I just can't even handle it. And so like this deal is like, you have all this education, you have the best photographers in the world, and you have time. Yeah. What are you going to do?
I want to shift gears a little bit, and Matt, I want to have you jump in and talk about gear a little bit. You know, Anna hit on a topic there, just the whole idea of using excuses so that you don't have to do something, right? So, and
Sure.
a lot of photographers use the excuse of gear. Hey, if I had Matt Granger's stuff, I could shoot shots like Matt Granger.
Sure.
If I had his lights, I could do that. If, you know, what do you tell those photographers? Should people be obsessing over gear, or, you know, it doesn't matter?
So I don't know if I'm going to divide opinions here. I personally,
Yes.
I love a lot of the equipment that I use. As an educator, I don't want people to fall into that. And I completely agree with Anna. There's a lot of things that I have excuses why I'm not achieving them. And when I get past that and actually put my energy into it, they get done. And it's, you know, I have a series on my YouTube channel called Budgetography, where I use like $100 camera kit to do a shoot to show people, no, you don't need the latest eye tracking and 100 megapixels to get these kind of shots. You just need a great idea and some time and some effort. Having said that, and I don't think anyone, whether you're rich or poor or beginner or advanced, should be buying beyond your means or beyond what you can, you know, justify in your business. But if it brings you joy and it gets you to go out and shoot, then I have no problem with it. You know, if I shoot often with a mirrorless camera with eye autofocus when I'm teaching, just because that's one less thing I have to think about when I'm thinking about scripts and lighting and videographers and keeping everyone on set happy. At least I know the shot will at least be in focus, so I don't get home at the end of the day frazzled and I missed the shot. Right. But for myself, an old manual focus, fully manual everything camera, like a crazy overpriced Leica camera, that makes me want to pick it up and go shoot and be creative. And I can afford it, and I love shooting with it. So I have it. And I don't know, I think the gear shouldn't be why you don't go and do something, but saying that gear doesn't matter at all, I think is also kind of a bit of a delusion. There's a reason why the best driver in the best car wins the race. It is, in a way, it's both. You know, if you need certain features, some cameras have them and some don't.
Right, the horsepower. Chris, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree or disagree, but my kind of take on gear, I think, is gear is good enough now. Walk into a store blindfolded, grab a camera, it's good enough. Doesn't matter what brand, what make, what model, you know. And my mom takes great photos with her old iPhone, or you know. So I think, you know, echoing a little bit what you're saying is again just again, it's that if only thinking, rather than shooting and saying, if only I had the better version of this lens, saying, this is the lens I have, go. This is the fog that's happening right now in this mermaid moment, go. And that's what at least helps me versus not. And that's when I've stood next to other photographers and seen them use different gear, or other musicians. I know some famous musicians, they pick up my old guitar and they make magic. And it's because what they're bringing and how they work with that tool. So anyway, so that's kind of my take on it. You know, don't let it be an excuse. I think we kind of all have that theme in our thing. And I think most successful people do. And that's part of the fun.
Well, Chris, continue with you. How do you get good at not only just photography, but like post-processing? You know, a lot of people struggle with post-processing, you know, making images over-processed, or not doing enough, or not understanding, you know, different techniques and layers and channels and separate, you know, how do you get ninja at post-processing so that you can reveal the image that you were trying to get to?
Yeah. So here's my take on that. When I started photography, I was like, I realized that style is everything, right? Because if you don't have your own distinct style, your own voice, your own vision, then you're just blending in. So I was like, okay, how do you develop that? How do you achieve that? Part of it is knowing your gear really well. Part of it's knowing how to shoot certain ways. Part of it's post-production. It's that whole thing. And I asked a lot of great photographers, how do you get there? And they said, well, shoot for 10 years and it will emerge. And I said, I don't have 10 years. Like, I want to get there tomorrow. And they said, sorry, you can't. And I set out to prove them wrong. And the way that I've discovered that is, I think some people will try to get to the top of the mountain by taking every path, and they'll take every path and every route. And I say, rather than take every path, get a little backpack, pick one and go. And what I mean by that is, in the post-production side of things, you do not need to learn everything there is in Photoshop. You only need to learn the things that are important and relevant to you. The people who tried it, and let's say with gear as well, because we're talking about gear, my workshop students, and I'm sure Anna and Matthew, you have these as well. They'll show up with more gear than I have, and they have so much gear they can't shoot because it's like weighing them down. Versus the one gal who shows up with a 50 and a camera body, and she's like the best work out of anyone. And so again, I think it's narrowing, it's limiting, and I think having constraints is where creativity really, really comes to life. So I apply that to the capture, to the gear, and especially to the post-production, because I don't know about you guys, but you can waste a lot of time tinkering around in Photoshop versus executing and really going for it.
Yeah. Anna, piggyback on that, on what Chris said, when photographers sort of get in that vortex of, I got to buy more gear, I got to buy this, I got to get that, and if they come to a workshop, like one of your workshops, and they're like, you know what, I can't show up with, what if this happens? I got to have my fisheye, what if that happens? I got to have my 70-200 with, and then they get into that, and then they end up with the Charlie Brown backpack, right? So what should they do? Like, what should photographers do? Should it be an exercise in constraint? Just like, okay, I'm going to shoot with a 50 and that's it. I'm going to show up with a 50 and one memory card. That's all I got. Or is there a sweet spot of gear?
Here's my thing. I'm someone, I will use something until it dies and it breaks. I have a 20-year-old son who absorbs all the technical. He tells me about the latest gear all the time. He's doing video, he's doing phenomenal things. And he could spin circles around me on the latest gear. He knows all the specs, and Mom, you should buy this, and this. I will literally use something until it dies. In fact, I just bought a new camera because my other one went in the ocean and I watched it go in the ocean. But my thing is, people don't know why they have what they have. So people show up to a workshop, and for newborn work, they show up with the latest camera and a 50 and nothing else. And I'll be like, why did you buy that camera? Because newborn photographer, the next block, told me to buy it. And so then they come to me and they can't work with a 50 because I put the baby on a floor, and they're like, I got to stand on a 10-foot ladder. And I'm like, never mind the liability of trying to stand over a little 6-pound baby, but you don't even know why you have that 50. Oh, I know why I have that 50, because so-and-so has that 50 and her images are beautiful. So I get really frustrated with photographers because I was like, you need to know why you're buying the gear that you're buying. Back in the day, I used to walk in the camera stores and talk to all the guys behind the counter. I'm the only female. Tell me how to use a light meter. Tell me what this lens does. Tell me what this body does. And I would talk to them and say, tell me, because 20 years ago, there weren't that many women. And so I was like, I'm not going to show up to a shoe and not know what I'm doing. So tell me what this lens is going to do. So no one knows why they even have the gear they have. So whatever you do, don't buy the gear that Susan's buying because her work is good. Get out there, rent. That's one of the things my son has taught me. He loves to rent gear. Last year, he went to 5 countries. When he graduated high school, he took a gap year and was filming documentaries in Europe. And he convinced the guy that was hiring him to rent $30,000 in equipment at 18 years of age. And Zeiss sent my son free lenses, just to give you an idea how passionate my son is. Because my son was like, I want to try this gear. I want to test it. I can't afford to buy $20,000 lenses from Zeiss. So he convinced Zeiss to lend him equipment. Then he'll drive to LA. He'll rent equipment from Gear Guys. He'll spend 3 hours. He'll say, I'm going to the Dubai desert with my mom. What should I have? You've got to research what is the purpose of your job and what are the best tools for the job. And if you don't have the money, buy something used. And then if you have a really important job, rent it. But whatever you do, don't just buy gear because Sally Mae next door is buying it and it's working for her. And then learn how to use your gear. I'm in workshops with people that are spending thousands of dollars and they don't even know how to set their white balance. I'm like, oh my gosh, just learn how to use your gear. Sit in your room alone by yourself and read your manual on a Saturday night because there's nothing else to do right now.
Yeah, that's what they used to tell us when I was in the military. They used to give us the cameras they issued us were Nikons. I'm not going to tell you the model because then that'll date me, but they were Nikon cameras. And the big edict was RTFM, or read the manual, right? So read the manual first, go through it, and then ask questions. Don't ask questions before reading it. Speaking of questions, let's take some from the chat room. And folks, if you have questions for our esteemed panel here, feel free to throw them in that Q&A section, and we'll get to them in just a minute. But I want to take a couple right now. The first one's from Frederick. Welcome back, Frederick. Frederick was on an earlier webinar. He says, do you have any suggestions about how to publish or self-publish a book with photos, either ebook or print? Do you have suggestions for tools, services, or other aspects? Who wants to take that? Chris, you've published several books before, right?
Yeah, I haven't done it self-published though. I was just thinking about that. And a lot of you guys are kind of getting my vibe. I'm a little bit more conceptual in my approach, which is if someone comes to me and says, how do I do a book? I say, okay, why? I think, Anna, it was interesting when you talked about why do you use the tools and all that. I would say that with a book, well, why do you want to do a book? And part of it, I think, is to commit to a project. You know, if you have enough images to fill a book and they're cohesive and consistent, and there's kind of a start, a middle, and end, that's something to aim for, regardless of whether it sells or not. I mean, you grow a lot as a photographer when you commit to a project, whatever it is. Let's say it's hot air balloon book, and it's like, okay, you need 100 really, really good images of hot air balloons, and not just the lucky shot, but so I would go that route. And then as far as publishing, I mean, Blurb, and there's all these other avenues out there. I think if someone's thinking about a book as a way to generate income, not a great idea. If they're thinking of it as a way to generate energy, passion, refined craft, go for it. So that's
Really
kind of
good.
my conceptual approach to it.
Absolutely. Really, really good advice. Yeah. Cause I don't know. I'm not familiar with the publishing industry and how it stands today, but I can guess that there's not a whole lot of riches being made, it's in certain areas. So Matt Granger, one of the questions in the chat is about film, and people are, the question is, how do you feel about shooting film? Are you a film shooter? Have you shot in film have you used film before?
Sure. I mean, I'm older than I look as well. I grew up on film and I studied in the darkroom. I was lucky to come from a small town that strangely had a full darkroom facility in rural Australia.
Okay.
I loved it. And so I currently don't shoot any film. I actually just sold my Hasselblad and my 35mm film cameras. And to be honest, I don't miss the whole process. I certainly don't miss smelling like chemicals every day.
Yeah.
But in the same way, limiting yourself to one lens or limiting yourself in any way can be a great way to learn technically, to challenge yourself creatively. I can see why for a lot of people shooting film is it's a great motivator and a kind of a like tying one hand behind your back to improve your skills, that kind of thing. I personally don't anymore, but yeah, I can see the value of it. I don't see that there's a big aesthetic difference these days that is that difficult to achieve in post if you want to just get the look rather than the process. What I actually miss about film is how beautiful and mechanical the cameras were to use.
The art, cameras, I guess they still kind of are art, but yeah, the mechanic sort of clockworkness of the device was part of the allure of everything. Let's talk about that a little bit, because one of the directions I wanted to take this conversation is forward facing and looking at the software tools that are here and that are showing up. Apple just released the iPhone 12, or announced it last week, and it went on sale just this past Friday for pre-order, with some serious computational photography superpowers in it. Again, software manufacturers are doing artificial intelligence type stuff, in processing, taking a lot of the hard work away from photographers in some case. And some photographers argue that it's taking the art away from the process. And I heard in a YouTube video that I just watched earlier today, a photographer called it dishonest. Said augmented, using not augmented, but artificial reality or artificial intelligence applied to post-processing is dishonest. Where do you guys fall on that? Anna, what do you think about these tools that are coming up that make things a little bit easier or harder, or should it be hard? What do you think?
Gosh, I started my career in film, and I remember when digital came, that everyone said, oh, now everyone's going to do their own photos. And I remember when the printers came out, everyone's going to print their own work. And I feel like there's always this worry that everything we have is going to vanish. And I disagree. I have 3 teenagers that are rocking technology. They make TikTok videos while I boil pasta. The things that I've seen my son do in color correcting in video. I love technology. I think it's fascinating. My 17-year-old can pick up the iPhone and edit like in Lightroom that like I've never seen before. She literally laughs at some of my editing on the Mac because she can take her phone and edit using the Lightroom app, and it's brilliant. For someone who travels, I mean, we travel a lot, well, except this year, but traveling all the different countries, I loved the use of the phones for my kids and just for my own travel experiences. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's amazing. I don't think it has any threat on my own photography career. And I'm in a different, area than these guys are, but I'm in, maternity and newborn. I mean, you can get the best, this phone can walk out, talk to you and wake you up in the morning, but it's not going to be able to photograph mom and her newborn baby. It's just not. So I don't look at technology as a threat. I've got 3 teenagers that are singing dances around me and they're always like, oh, mom, you don't understand the new technology that's coming out. And to me, I just embrace it. I mean, we have a hair and makeup person that we just brought in our studio and the mom was doing makeup in the other room. And I said to my videographer, can I shoot to the iPad or to the TV in that room so she can watch me shooting her baby? Because she can't, she's doing hair and makeup. And we did that. And mom was so happy. And I was like, oh, I want to do this for 2021. I want to be able to, if they're doing hair and makeup in the other room, and I'm shooting their newborn, I want them to be able to see it. So I think as a professional photographer, you're going to embrace technology, but I don't think that we should be threatened by it.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. Chris, do you agree? Like, or not agree? Yeah. What's your take on that?
Yeah. I think, photography has always been connected to technology. I mean, from the very beginning, obviously it's a technological breakthrough that we can actually create images. And so I think leaning into that is the answer. And then also realizing that there's space, just like there is in music, there's going to be space for someone that goes with really basic, simple instruments and makes amazing sound and is world famous. And there's someone who's going to go really technological into music and music production, and they're going to be equally as expressive. So I think it's more finding your comfort level, and maybe going back to my daughter, or my oldest, I have 3 daughters, but thinking like electric guitar versus acoustic. I mean, that was technology, right? It was loud. Adds distortion, adds effects, adds all these different things. I'm glad Bob Dylan went to electric. That's great, but I'm glad other people stayed acoustic. And so I think it's, as an individual photographer, who cares about the world and everyone else, but as people are listening, really starting to ask yourself, well, am I more of a ukulele? Am I more of a banjo? Am I more of an acoustic? Or am I more of an electric acoustic or electric guitar or electric guitar distorted? That's really the question. And that's where the art and craft, I think, becomes interesting.
Love it. I love it. Great. See, these are just like inspirational. I want to switch gears. Speaking of inspiration, I want to switch gears and talk about why we're here. The 5-day deal bundle. This is a 5-day deal webinar. Chris Orwig, continuing with you, what product did you put in the bundle and why, and what can people expect to get out of that?
Yeah, the one that I put in the bundle is Photoshop. And the backdrop behind that is, as I've taught, again, thousands of students, I've started to identify people who only use Lightroom. And it's similar, I think, kind of like baking a cake. My middle daughter loves to bake cakes. Photoshop. Wait, did I tell what product is? Photoshopped class is what I included.
Oh, I was like, did you buy Adobe, Chris Orwig? What happened?
No, I don't know what I was saying, but basically not enough people are learning Photoshop, I believe, because Lightroom is like the generalist. You can do a lot of specifics, but to do the icing, to do the last 5%, that's Photoshop. And so I think if it were baking a cake, Lightroom is like mixing, baking, assembling. Photoshop is the icing and the final little details. And so that's the one that I included to try to say, how do we do that in a way that isn't overwhelming, that's easy to follow, that's empowering, and so that we can achieve that level of kind of image. And for me, every magazine cover I've done, every published image I've ever had has gone from Lightroom and Photoshop. And so in my case, I wanted to add that to the mix.
Awesome. Awesome. Chris, on that, back in the day, we used to say, and this was back when I was working at Adobe, we used to say that Lightroom is kind of like your, generally speaking, is kind of like your general practitioner, using a medical analogy, and then Photoshop would be your specialist when you got to get in there and, get really detailed. But Lightroom could handle most of the town's ailments, but you needed Photoshop every now and then. Is that still the case?
I think so. And I think that's a great metaphor. I think it still holds true. I remember you told that to me years ago back when you were at Adobe Photo Plus, one of those conferences. I remember you saying that, and that resonated. And yeah, and I think it's, when we think about software, and Annie even talking about her 17-year-old daughter using it at Lightroom on the phone, which is amazing as well. I think what we want to do is say, how can software kind of serve me versus me serve it? So you don't have to use any tool, but it's really like, what tools do I like? And then how can those help me achieve my style of image and my voice? And again, that goes back kind of to that music example as well, that, there is something to be said for not feeling the need to do things just because you can. I think some of my students, I'll see them retouch something and the image is worse. And I'll say, yeah, but it took me 4 hours to retouch that out. And I'm like, yeah, it's worse though. And then we step back and they're like, you're right. You know what it is? Because it lost a sense of veracity. It lost a sense of truth. It lost a sense of emotion. It lost a sense of connection. Because really what we want people to do when they look at our images is never to say, wow, you're good at Lightroom, or wow, you're good at Photoshop. We want them to feel. And so what we have to do is get good enough at these tools so that we're hiding our tracks. So they don't know what lens, they don't know what camera, they don't know what software. They just know that mermaid shot on the beach is beautiful. And I'm kind of falling into the image versus analyzing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It's like, what's the analogy you used? The idea that, so you use the plastic surgery analogy. If you had plastic surgery done and someone comes up to you and they say, wow, your plastic surgeon did a really good job on that's not what you want to hear. Say with your photos, you don't want to hear, wow, you did a really good job retouching that sky. It almost looks real. Right? You don't want to hear that. Matt Granger, man, what do you have in the 5-day deal bundle this time around?
This year, we actually filmed a brand new course. I wanted to have something that my audience hadn't seen before, and something that wouldn't seem like too big of a thing to take on for people. So I wanted to do something on single light portraiture, but we did it as how to get the most dramatic results you can. So we set up 5 different shoots doing different kind of techniques and, limiting ourselves in different ways to create the most dramatic results we could with single light. And then we've got a bonus one as well of, it's also single light, but it's a bathtub themed shoot where we built up this great colored tub with lots of flowers and show how to control all of the reflections and that kind of thing.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's interesting, to look at the breadth of, like, you, for example, Matt, staying with you for a second, the breadth of things that you've done, the self projects that you've given yourself, and the just down the line. Is Matt still in here? Oh yeah, you moved up. Is Matt still in the chat? I think I lost him.
I hear you.
Oh, there you are. Okay, it's interesting. Zoom did some sort of weird thing. But I remember you and I were talking, was it years ago? You are the master of sort of self projects, right? And pushing the edge. I remember you did that one where you were shooting, you were doing shots in like the middle of Tokyo and those sorts of things, and sort of pushing the limit of what you could do with self projects. Talk to us about that a little bit. There's just the importance of self projects and what that has done for your craft and your career.
Well, it was something in the back of my mind when we were talking about specializing or becoming a generalist, and how do you find your niche, and how do you, get recognized, what Anna was saying about having a recognizable body of work. I think it's basically by working out and shooting as much of what turns you on creatively. So it could be that shooting events or whatever it is paying the bills, but shooting conceptual mermaid shots, is what really, lights a fire in you. And
Yep.
it's often that personal project that's actually the breakout thing that people earn a name with. So, I still shoot projects for myself all the time. I'm planning different shoots. And the 5-Day Deal project that we shot it had been a couple of months where I hadn't been able to go out and shoot anything big. So we set up a series of shoots where we rented giant houses, and then, we'll at 25% productivity, because we would have a team come in and have to clean the entire house, and then only have 2 people in a room at a time to be able to film it and everything. But it was, in a way, its own creative challenge to figure out how can we make a course that doesn't look like it was filmed socially distanced.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, good. All right. Last but not least, in terms of the bundle inclusions, Anna, what's the tutorial or products that you have included in this year's 5-Day Deal?
Well, I actually created some brand new wrapping videos because I specialize in maternity and new. You have to be wrap a baby and wrap them well. If it's going to be rough. This 10-day-old baby will kick your ass. So you need to know how to wrap well. So did all new baby wrapping videos. So if newborn is not your thing, you can just watch them and be amused if you want. But if you're trying to learn newborn photography, I think you'll enjoy these videos.
That's cool. That's cool. Can you expand on that? I'm really curious about newborn photography, because it seems like I'm curious and terrified, because I look at your photos and they look fantastic photos, but I look at them and I'm like, that's dangerous. It just looks dangerous. So like my camera's so heavy, and the lights and electricity, and there's somebody's little bundle of joy right there. How do you do it? Like, how do you stay sane capturing that stuff?
I do say all the time to my students, there is no amount of money or insurance in the world that is going to save you if something happens. So safety is very important. I have my lights are on a ceiling track, and they've been that way since my very first studio 17 years ago. And because I didn't want little kids tripping over light cords. So one of the first things I did was put my lights in the ceiling, but then there's always that, what if the light falls down? So the light is, number one, never, ever above a newborn. There's nothing ever above a newborn. You want to talk about safety, is I actually yell at photographers all the time because they don't use safety straps. So I use one on my wrist because the neck one really bothers me. I can't hold a baby and have a gear on my body. So you'll never see anything around my waist or body. I always have a hand strap. Now we work with masks. It is not for the faint of heart. You've got to know how to work with newborns. I mean, I started in the church nursery at 12 years of age, and I have a 15-year-old who's been babysitting since she was 12. You've got to love babies. And when I mean love them because they're going to spit up on you, vomit on you, cry in your face, poop on you, pee on you. And if you don't love them with every power of your being, you need to find something else to do. Because I'm upset. I mean, I've been doing it 20 years straight. I love newborns. I take the safety extremely seriously. I teach it. And every job, every baby, every session, you're watching everything. You're watching the lights, the equipment, the gear of a videographer, an assistant, the baby, a spotter. It blows my mind when new photographers want to work with newborns and won't even pay for an assistant. They'll say, I'm a hobbyist, I can't afford an assistant. I say, you can't afford not to have an assistant. You're going to take a 10-day-old baby, put him in a bucket, walk away with your camera. You got to be out of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, I'm so, for every photographer that says I can't afford an assistant, I just like, I lose my mind, because
Yeah.
it's such
whatever you charge, Anna, you should double it, because that is that is some harrowing work there. That, I mean, and you create heirloom images that I'm sure will be in the family for generations. So yeah, whatever you're charging is well worth it. Congratulations on that, though.
Thank you.
I want to bring, let's move into the Q&A. I want to bring Griffin Stewart on. He's one of the co-founders of the 5-Day Deal. to help me answer these. Actually, you guys are going to answer these, but I wanted to bring Griffin on to talk a little bit about the inception of the 5-day deal, how it's going. Because Griffin, we're at about the midway point through the deal right now, right?
Yeah, sure are. We've got a little less than 1 day and 20 hours to go. And yeah, so how we came up with this is we've seen some other bundles. We started back in 2014, and we'd seen some bundles in travel and small business and wanted to try it with photography. And since the beginning, I co-founded it, me and my wife and another couple, which we've since bought out. And right at the beginning, we wanted it to be more than just something that would help photographers and would help us make a living for our family. We wanted to give back. And so ever since 2014, ever since our first bundle, we donate 10% of gross revenue to charity. And when we first started, we thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice if, maybe 10 grand or 20 grand or 30 grand could be donated per year. And eventually that would build up and make a major impact. And we were really excited. And we were just blown away with the response. Our first sale that we had, we were able to donate more than 45,000 to charity. And the second sale we had over 200, and I think over 200,000 to charity. So our first year was just unbelievable, the impact that it's had. Since that time, we are, as of right now with this sale, we have donated over $2 million to charities since we started. And it's also become my full-time job. My wife works full-time. We've got another great girl, Portraiture, that works full-time with us. So it's just been an amazing blessing. And it's also just so encouraging to be able to work with amazing people like Anna, Matt, Chris, Frederick. You've been a contributor for multiple years as well. And to me, the creative community, and especially the photography community, in my experience, like just really awesome people that enjoy beauty, in nature, beauty in people, and just great people to work with. So it's been a real pleasure, and just really thankful for it.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Griffin. That's helpful to put context around it, because during the deal time, there's emails flying out and promotions and all this stuff, and it's really helpful to get context of why you guys are doing this and who it's helping, what the impact is, and how it's literally changing lives. So yeah, thanks for shedding some light on that. I want to move in. There's a couple of questions that came in. One of the viewers, or one of the folks in the chat room, wants to know this question, or direct this question to Anna. And they say, do you use external flash when taking newborn shots? Do the parents object to the burst of light?
Good question. Thank you. I was waiting for this question to come. So I am a Profoto explorer of light. I do use Profoto lighting, not flash. So, I've been teaching in Asia for over 8 years, and that's a very big common question in Asia, because I remember when I first went to China, they were like, no, they said I couldn't use any studio light at all. Well, I'm a natural light photographer and a studio light photographer, so that doesn't bother me. But over the years, I was able to bring Profoto lighting into Asia. I mean, they were already there, but they actually allowed me in China to use it, which was a very big deal, because they said that it was harmful to newborns. Here's the thing. I don't believe that you should ever use flash on a newborn, ever. If you're at home and you have a camera in front of you and you have a flash mount on it, or direct flash, do not point it at the baby's face. Absolutely not. What I use is diffuse lighting. So there'll never, ever be direct flash on a baby's face. I use Profoto lighting, and I use a shoot through umbrella. So the light is being diffused through the light. If you measure the distance of the actual bulb to a newborn's eyes, it's about 8 to 10 feet away, and it's never direct. It will always be feathered or angled. So if you're working at home, whether you're an amateur or you're a hobbyist and you're learning, please don't ever use direct flash pointing down in a baby's eyes, because I do not believe it's safe. I believe you should use diffuse lighting, and always make sure that it's not direct, non-directional, not pointing directly at the baby.
And all of your lighting. No, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that Pro Photo is the only lighting that I know of in the world that actually has a UV coating on their light.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Yeah, that was one of my questions as well. Is like, I think of all the different things that can affect a newborn. And as a photographer, it's almost it for me, it would feel, and as a parent, I look at that, I'm like, you got to be kind of surgically safe, like bunny suit in there, especially these days. How has the pandemic and all that changed everything? Has it slowed or paused your business, Anna?
It did pause us. We shut down for 2 months because we were
Mhm.
required to. I mean, California was shut down.
Sure.
So when we were shut down and my kids were out of school, I was home. I had told my clients that we will shut down until we were allowed by our county to go back in. When we went back in, I normally would photograph 2 to 3 newborns a day because I book anywhere from 6 to 8 months out. So I changed it so that I would only book 1 newborn a morning, and my staff stayed home for the first 2 months. They would only come in for a session. And what they would do is I have an assistant that works with me directly, and my videographer only comes in if the session is paid for his service. So 50% of the time, it's probably just my assistant and the other 50%, my videographer is there. And we have masks, and we put on fresh yoga socks, and I put in sanitary stations everywhere. And I probably clean my hands 5,000 times during a session just in front of the parents. I put hands-free thing. And when I first came back, I actually had a lot of anxiety because I was so worried about the liability of, I hadn't been sick and nor had my family, but I was just so worried about the liability that what if I went to the grocery store and I contracted something and I went to the newborn. So
No.
personally, the anxiety I had inside, I had it really strong for about 2 months. And I just each time would say, okay, I'm going to go in. I'm going to just do everything I can to be safe, scrub up, mask up, apron, socks, the whole 9 yards. Fortunately, I'd say probably 80% of my clients since we came back are existing clients. The other 20% have been new. And we let them know in our client prep guide that we do wear masks, that no one is allowed in shoots unless they're masked, that they don't have to be masked, but we do. And that we just make sure to just pay extra attention. And then everything that touches the baby gets cleaned. So we do laundry like 7 days a week. Everything is sanitized. But I also, honestly, in China, that's kind of how we worked. They had sanitizing bins when I went and worked in some of the China hospitals. They made us take off their socks, scrub up. So a lot of what I do now, I actually kind of learned in Asia before I got here. So when the
Yeah.
pandemic hit, I had already had boxes of masks. So I feel like I'm not doing that much differently just because of my international travel. But you never, there's nothing, like I said, there's no amount of money in the world that's going to risk hurting a newborn baby. You've got to be
Absolutely.
safe 24/7. And that
Yeah.
means restricting where you go. I don't go very far. I keep my family. We're pretty close. We don't wander and hang out in parties and things like that. We just kind
We're
of
all we're
try
all
to be.
learning. We're all learning as we go. And I want to wrap up with and have you guys sort of tell folks where they can go to check you out and kind of see the stuff that you're working on and workshops and all that stuff. But Chris, I wanted to throw one question to you before we get out of here on, like I said at the beginning, you are an amazingly inspirational photographer. You're an educator. You and I had a chance to work together a little bit, kind of in the Brooks days back in the day. I'm looking at your work on Instagram. Can you tell us a little bit about your process? There's a little bit of how, these portraits. So I'll bring these up here so folks can see what I'm looking at here. How are you, what's your process for shooting these, and what was sort of the impetus behind this portrait series?
Yeah, so for me, it's all about trying to capture something that's beneath the surface and to connect with people and to do so in an authentic way. And so a lot of that comes from, I think the idea that the pictures we make really reflect who we are. And I think you can see that for all three of us, in different ways. And what I encourage people to do with whatever type of photography it is to really look within. And so what that means, let's say in portraiture, I have some students who say, well, I'm really shy. And I say, you're going to be a great portrait photographer, because people who are shy are really thoughtful. They're really mindful. They're really present. They're really engaged. Other people say, well, I'm really magnanimous and outgoing and crazy and fun. I said, well, you could be a great portrait photographer, because we need those portraits that are magnanimous and fun and outgoing and so long story short is, the more you can align with who you are, the more you can bring yourself into your work, the better off you'll be.
I love it. I love it. And if people want to connect with you, Chris Orwig, and you know, otherwise follow you, what's a good location for them to do that?
Yeah. And maybe the last thing I'll say in portraiture, my style of it is, one of my friends put it this way, said, it's what we need to do is when we look at other people, other subjects, one, realize that portraiture is the most inclusive genre of photography. Fashion, you need a certain kind of clothes. Food, you need the food to look style, but portraiture is about humanity. So everyone's a good portrait subject. And what we need to do is look so deeply at another that we see ourselves, we see that human connection. And so to really lean into that, and that's what makes it interesting. And there's a lot of wisdom to gain from whoever it is we're photographing. So anyway, for me and following and all that stuff, it's just my name on all the different social channels or books or websites or whatever. And that's Chris Ortwig. So that's an easy way to keep in touch.
I love it. I love it. Always inspirational. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate you. Matt Granger, what about you, man? If people want to connect with you or otherwise see what you're up to online, what's a good place for them to go?
Probably YouTube's the easiest. We put out a lot of educational content there, and at the moment we're doing weekly photo reviews where we give out a theme, and then every Friday we get together and have a beer and go through people's images. Also, obviously, Instagram. I've got a couple of different websites for the educational courses. Facebook, and as per Chris and most of us, my handle is just my name, Matt Granger. You can find me on all the different platforms.
Fantastic. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate you coming on tonight. Always a pleasure chatting with you. And last but not least, Anna, what about yourself? If people want to connect with you online, we've been showing your work a little bit tonight, but if people want to connect with you, where should they go?
Yeah, same, Anna Brandt. You can go to annabrandt.com, Anna Brandt videos on YouTube, Anna Brandt on Instagram. It's just my name. You can Google me and probably find out too much that's out there. Yeah, I teach online and actually starting to teach domestically in person, just some small little trips here and there as things slowly open up. But I have a million links. I probably have far too many Instagram accounts, far too many Facebook pages. But I post pretty regularly, I think, like everybody else. You can see it all out there. It's fun.
I love it.
I love what I do. I think we all do. And I think it's a journey. You know, I mean, people are in such a rush. They're so impatient. They just want to get to the end zone, but it's a journey. You got to just go through the process and allow yourself to evolve.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Don't put yourself in a box. And, you know, these webinars that we've put on over the past couple of days have been really inspiring. We've learned, you know, that gear, don't let yourself be constrained by gear. You know, experiment. A lot of photographers were saying experiment to find your different genre. Embrace technology, but don't let it rule you, you know, on and on and on. So yeah, photography for me is exciting because it is three things. It appeals to the nerdy side of me. It appeals to the artistic side of me and the psychological, because I like portraits too, Chris. So it's the psychological of trying to connect with the subject while also being technically proficient to get the shot, and then artistic enough to create something that, you know, tells the story that you're trying to tell. So yeah, and that goes for landscape and all this other stuff. So this is fun. Thank you all for coming on. It's been a fantastic webinar. Griffin, you want to take us home? Any final thoughts before we close it off?
Yeah, just want to say thanks so much, everybody. Thanks so much, Anna, Matt, Chris, and Frederick. We really appreciate it. We wanted something during the bundle that provided value and, you know, just is kind of special without charging for it or, you know, having any paywall for it. So I hope this was helpful, and I've really enjoyed it, and just wanted to say thanks so much, everybody. Our sale will be on until October 20th at noon Pacific time. So if you want to go check out the site, see if it makes sense for you. If it doesn't, we know a lot of people are struggling during this time, and things are kind of rough financially. So we totally understand, you know, if the bundle doesn't make sense for you right now, but we did try to make it as valuable as possible. We've packed it full of amazing resources. It's over 96% off, and 10% of that goes to charity. So, but yeah, thanks so much, everybody. We really appreciate it.
Wonderful. All right, everybody. Thank you. You guys have a good night, and yeah, enjoy the bundle.